welcome to the Doula Dispensary, the podcast prescribing a weekly dose of all things doula. The dilemmas discussed are made-up scenarios, and any resemblance to actual persons or events are purely coincidental. Please welcome your hosts, Siobhan and myself, Kiki. Hello everyone and welcome to the Doula Dispensary. Well, today I am here on my own because Siobhan is having a well-deserved holiday, and I thought today we should do a special episode. On the 19th of August this year, the world of birth lost a true pioneer, Michel Audin. Michel was a French obstetrician, author and childbirth specialist whose work has influenced generations of midwives, doulas and families around the whole world. He's best known for introducing home-like birthing rooms and birthing pools into hospitals, and for writing the very first articles about initiating breastfeeding in the first hour after birth, way back in 1977. His ideas about creating calm, private spaces for birth and recognizing the deep connection between early life experiences and lifelong health completely changed how we think about childbirth. Over his lifetime, Michel published around 17 books, translated into more than 20 languages, including classics like Birth Reborn, Primal Health, and Childbirth and the Evolution of Homo sapiens. After leaving his hospital work in France, he moved to London and founded the Primal Health Research Centre, where he explored how events from conception through the first year of life can shape a person's future. I also had the privilege of organising a few events with Michel Audin over the years, and he was always such a joy to be around. You know, he had this wonderful twinkle in his eye and a warm, mischievous humour that made everyone feel at ease. And we mustn't forget that Doula UK itself started around his kitchen table in London all those years ago, and Michel Audin was one of the first ones to offer doula training or doula preparation courses here in the UK. Michel did so much to improve the experiences of women, babies and families throughout the perinatal period, leaving a massive legacy that continues to inspire so many of us today. Now, going back to July 2019, Siobhan and I had the privilege of sitting down with Michel Audin for a conversation in his house in London, and I think we'll never forget this. Listening to his words now, they feel as powerful and relevant as ever. I just want to say that our thoughts go out to Michel Audin's family and loved ones at this time. And we have all truly lost a great man. So here it is, our conversation with Michel Audin. So hello everyone, very welcome this evening to our Birthplace Academy Live, and we are so happy and excited to be here with Michel Audin in his house. And we also have Siobhan Smith, who's always here helping me with these live sessions. So we have had some questions come in, Michel. And I thought since we have so many questions, we should start straight away with the questions. So, yes, that's very good. So one of the questions that we had was, what did you used to think you wanted to be when you were a child?
Back when I was a child, I didn't know what I might do as an adult.
Okay.
I was vague. I was thinking of many things. I'm vague. My mother was a teacher. I was thinking of teaching, perhaps. But I think that the turning point, I've been quite precise. It was during the school year 1947-1948.
Okay.
I did a year of philosophy. And with our professor of philosophy, Monsieur Hilaret, a teacher in philosophy, often he was introducing a topic, a concept. And during a certain time, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, doesn't matter, we are discussing from that. And I must say that there is one concept that has been probably influential in my particular case. He suggested, I'll explain what it means because it's in Latin originally.
Okay.
He said, now we'll discuss the concept of vis medicatrix naturae.
Okay.
What does it mean?
Yeah.
It means, roughly, I translate, it's not perfect, the healing power of nature.
Okay.
The power of nature has, to heal diseases and so on, broken legs and so on and so on. So during a certain time, we have discussing this concept. And it was an ideal way. Already at that time, I repeat, 1947, 1948, another phase in the history of medicine. It was a wonderful opportunity already at that time to be critical of medical attitude in general, to be critical. And critical in particular, what we call symptomatic medicine. That to say, when somebody has something wrong, they see a doctor. At that time, doctors were not very powerful. They could try to treat the symptoms.
Yes.
And I'll just give one example. One example. When you have a cold, you cough. You see the doctor, he will give you a syrup.
Yeah.
So you stop coughing.
Yeah.
But coughing is your way to clear up the respiratory tract.
Of course, yes.
It's part of the healing process.
Yeah.
So this is exactly what we've been discussing during a while. All many examples we already had at that time. Now we have millions of examples.
Yes.
We are critical of symptomatic medicine. It's not the role of medicine to eliminate the symptoms. It's much more first, before anything else, to protect what we call vis medicatrix naturae. I must say this has been very influential in my life and probably difficult to analyze.
Yes.
All the influences you have in your life. Probably it's how, at that time, I decided to study medicine. I had a strong interest in human beings.
Yeah.
It was before the age of human sciences, all these things.
Yeah.
Best way to study human beings was to study medicine.
Yeah.
So, so that was perhaps probably a turning point. It was after childhood. I was, already 17, 18, something like that. It's an example of powerful influence I had.
Absolutely.
Right.
So do you want to, because talking about that and treating symptoms rather than the cause often.
An example.
Yes. Well, so then that took you down the road of childbirth. You became very interested in childbirth. What was it specific? Was that linked to the same thing?
Yes. Once more, it's difficult to
Yes, of course.
analyze how I became involved in childbirth because when I was a medical student, as many young medical students, I wanted to be efficient, to be effective. And that's why I was trained as a surgeon. I was a surgeon. Why to be? To do something positive before the age of, drugs and so on, antibiotics and so on. And it happened that in the 1950s, suddenly there have been a turning point in the history of obstetrics. Suddenly there was a new technique of cesarean section, what we call the segmental technique, safe, easy, safe, good quality of scar and so on and so on. So that's how, as a surgeon, I learned the new technique. Obstetricians at that time had no surgical background. They were asking the surgeon, can you do a C-section?
Oh,
All right.
I see.
Okay.
The turning point has been 1958, 1959, when I was in the French army during the independence war in Algeria, in a city called Tizi Ouzou. I was in a hospital there, and at that time I became very familiar with a new technique of cesarean section. I must say that previously, as a medical student with minor responsibilities, had already spent 6 months in the maternity unit of a Paris hospital when I was very young. I had a little bit of obstetrical background. So that, to go back to the 50s, And what happened after that? In 1962, I became in charge of the surgical unit in a state hospital, an hour from Paris. I went to that hospital as a surgeon. It happened by chance that in that hospital there was no doctor in charge of the small maternity unit.
Okay.
200 births a year, 2 midwives. When they learned about my background, that I knew about the new technique of cesarean section, there was in the city an old surgeon, but he was still doing the old technique.
Okay.
Right.
In practice, non-officially, when they had a problem, they were calling me.
Okay.
And it's how I became, by chance, also in charge of the maternity unit. I was officially there for the surgical unit, but also maternity unit. It was not a lot of work because 200 births a year. But I developed an interest in childbirth, in understanding the importance of environmental factors, of the environment in a rural area. Obviously, many women from villages were not comfortable in a hospital. Traditionally, it was the way when you go to die, So I want to be fast. Reconsider everything.
Yeah.
Reconsider everything, way of thinking. It was not overnight. But for example, there was a time when we transformed a conventional delivery room into a small home-like birthing room. Women could forget they were in a hospital.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, they were not familiar with the hospital. We invited them to come and sing together,
Yes.
and so on. I was worried about possible side effects of drugs during labor, particularly a common situation when women have a terrible back pain. I thought that perhaps immersion in the water at temperature of the body might be a way to break a vicious circle and to avoid the use of drugs. It's how one day I went to a shop in our town
Yeah.
and I bought an inflatable garden paddling pool.
Yeah.
And it's how the history of birthing pool in the hospital started with the paddling pool.
What did your colleagues say when you came back with
But
this
by
birthing
chance,
pool?
I was not known as an obstetrician.
Okay.
So I was not so nobody was paying attention to what I was doing. That's an important point.
Yes.
My big advantage that I was not considered an obstetrician. I was known as a surgeon.
Yes.
So it's how gradually we attracted women from other places, we are not far from Paris.
Uh-huh.
The women in Paris heard about what's happening in our hospital.
Yeah.
They were from Orléans and so on. So finally, to be fast,
Yeah.
when I arrived there were 200 births a year. It's been increasing. After 1977, we had every year 1,000 births a year.
Oh, wow.
I was still the only doctor
Okay.
in charge of 1,000 births a year, 6 midwives. I needed young colleagues for surgery.
Okay.
So how it happened? There were some opportunities for reaching a new awareness. And I'll mention an anecdote that has been significant in my life. Once I was operating an elderly woman who had a cancer of the stomach. So the whole surgical team was busy. You know, the room, the official operating room, the team was busy. And while I was operating this woman, a woman arrived in the maternity unit in labor, bridge presentation. Everything went perfectly well.
Okay.
Midwife was not, at that time, midwife were not scared by bridge birth, you know,
No.
just wait for the baby, and after that you wait for the placenta. It's not. But in retrospect, I was thinking, you know, finally,
Yeah.
what was really more important? What should be the priority?
Yeah.
I was using a whole operating team to operate an elderly woman with a short life expectancy,
Yeah.
you know. And on the other hand, a baby was born bridge, a baby with an 80-year life expectancy. What is really serious about it, you know? So because I was not specialized, I was doing many kinds of medicine at the same time, that I realized that finally the way babies are born, it's a serious issue.
Yeah.
It was not really considered at that time as a very serious issue. You know, successful medical students were not considering obstetric as a first choice. They were specialized. It was not. It was a secondary specialty. But at that time, I was started to think, but you know, it's serious, serious. And that's how I was encouraged gradually to think a little more. And I was making observations that I found it interesting to mention. And perhaps it was a reason to focus a little bit on that. For example, I became convinced around 1977 that among humans, lactation is supposed to start during the hour following birth.
Yes.
Nobody knew that. Until that time, for thousands of years, one effect of perinatal beliefs and rituals in all cultures had been to delay the initiation of breastfeeding. And often to say, colostrum is not good for the baby.
Yeah.
It was one common belief and associated with rituals. And suddenly, through observation, I said, but you know, during the hour of following birth, when you don't interfere, when you don't do anything, when women don't feel observed, there is a time when baby is doing that.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
If the woman is still on another planet, because she has given birth by herself, if the birth is not too socialized, if it's completely, you know, she has forgotten the rest of the world, baby is doing that, the mother knows what to do.
Yeah.
And I became convinced through observation that among humans, lactation is supposed to start during the hour following birth. So all that led me to focus more and more on childbirth. I must say that at the same time, surgical techniques were changing.
Okay.
My generation of surgeons were opening the abdomen for abdominal surgery. It was much more and more keyhole surgery, laparoscopic surgery, a new education. I was not ready for that.
No.
So this is your question is interesting because it has to be analyzed. There was no project, you know. It happened like that.
Yeah.
I think it's partly because I was not considered an obstetrician.
Yeah.
You know, I was in a town in France, the nearest obstetrician were in Orléans, you know.
So they left it
40
to...
kilometers, they were not considering. When they heard about what we are doing, they couldn't understand exactly. When I started to publish, I was wondering what happens, you know.
Yes.
A good example was 1983. I published in the Lancet, so serious, authoritative medical journal, read by doctors all over the world. I published an article in Lancet about use of birthing pools for first time. And some doctors in Paris were, but who is this guy who's writing in Lancet? The dream of many professors of medicine in Paris was to be published in Lancet.
Yes.
This guy in a small size, we never heard of him.
Oh, that's really
So-
interesting, Michel. Yeah.
So in retrospect, you know, it's your question is a complex question.
Yes.
Very.
Yeah.
I just try to summarize why it's a complex question.
Yes.
I must say that now I'm mostly known as a doctor who is practicing obstetric, who has been practicing obstetric, but originally I am a surgeon.
Okay.
Yes.
That's interesting.
You talk about caesarean sections, which does lead us on to this next question, which is given that at least 1 in 4 women will now give birth via caesarean section, where do you see physiological birth by the end of this century?
Personally, I never talk about physiological birth. I
Okay.
don't know what it means. I talk about studying birth physiology, understanding birth physiology. Difficult to talk about physiological birth, and I'll explain why. Because until recently, we might say, that is to say, until the domination of nature by our ancestors, before the domestication of plants, animals, agriculture, animal husbandry, there was also, to a certain extent, a domestication of human beings. And about 10,000 years ago, recently, in the history of mankind,
Yeah.
suddenly, childbirth became socialized.
Yeah.
A turning point. Before that, women used to isolate themselves to give birth. Yeah, well, it was like that. I don't want to give details, but we have a sufficient amount of knowledge to say that. That's why I don't talk about physiological birth, because we don't know what it means after thousands of years of socialized birth. Cultural interferences with beliefs, rituals, presence of people who talk, and so on, with different steps in the socialization, with the last steps in the history, which is the masculinization and the medicalization of the environment. You know, birth has been socialized during many years, during thousands of years, it's been socialized, but it's only recently, and I can say when it started, because I started to be involved in childbirth in 1953. The next time, it's only recently that we have reached the last steps in the social of childbirth, which became masculinized because there were more and more doctors, and originally most of them were men. Men even new specialized doctors. Middle 20th century, there was no neonatology. It appeared at that time. No? So more and more doctors, and then in the 70s, suddenly a new doctrine of the baby's father participating in the birth. So there have been a gradual, for thousands of years, history of the socialization of childbirth, the interferences, many ways, with the last steps, you know, medicalization, socialization, and we might say that today we have reached the limits of the. In general, we might say we have reached the limits of the domination of nature. Whatever the topic, you can talk about the effect of human activities on the climate. You can talk about the pollution of the atmosphere. You can talk about anything. You can say we have reached the limit of the domination of nature. And where childbirth is concerned, easy to explain that in a scientific context of the 21st century. We can say that, but today, in the age of synthetic oxytocin, drips, replacing natural hormone, in the age of safe, fast, easy caesarean section, we can observe, it's an observation, I don't give opinion, I observe, that at a planetary level, at a global scale, the number of women who give birth to the baby and to the placenta, thanks to the release of what is now considered a cocktail of hormone of love, this number is becoming insignificant. What a turning point in the history of mankind, in the history of childbirth, in the history of social of childbirth. No need for hormone of love to have babies. You can explain that to everybody in 5 minutes. You can explain also, at the same time, that until recently, babies were born among a great diversity of familiar microbes. It was like that. It was like that just 5 years ago. It was like that. Interesting point, because among humans, the newborn baby has the same antibodies as the mother. The antibodies go easily through the placenta. So babies were first colonized by great diversity of familiar and therefore friendly microbes. It was like that. It was like that. And it's how the immune system of human beings was educated. Suddenly, it's the opposite. Nearly all babies are born in an unfamiliar environment, bacteriologically speaking. Lack of microbes and lack of diversity. Suddenly, the immune system of human beings is not educated in the same way, deprived of useful microbes. So, easy to explain to anybody at the present time, in some minutes, why we have reached the limits of the domination of nature. People think of the limits of the domination of nature for the weather, for many things, for the nuclear waste and so on. But for the evolution of human beings, of Homo, of Homo, we have to consider the evolution of Homo. This question, and people are not thinking of that.
No. Is that the what your book
leads you on?
That is very good comment.
Yeah.
This is exactly the main topic of this book.
Okay, so this is Michel's book.
Question mark.
It's called...
What I explain in this book?
Yes.
When we have reached the limit of the domination of nature, what happened today? There are futurologists that look toward the future. But futurologists, until now, only looked at the effect of human activities.
Okay.
Effect on climate, effect on anything else, And on the other hand, there are experts in evolution, evolutionary biologists. But they look toward the future. What we need to know are futurologists interested in the evolution of Homo. Obviously, there will be an evolution of Homo. It's obvious. When the period of birth is critical in the formation of human beings, there is no phase of human life that has been more dramatically disturbed within some decades than the birth process, no further than the period of birth. So today, suddenly, we have to raise questions about the evolution of Homo, but looking toward the future. People in evolution look toward the past, and futurologists don't think of Homo. So here we are, how to mix futurology and evolutionary way of thinking. So this is a topic of my next book.
Yes,
but the point there.
Yes, so let me show you all. It looks like this.
Yes. The question we have to raise. So constantly we have to raise questions. For example, here, you are here with your daughter. Your daughter is much higher than you.
Yeah, she is.
Homo is in a phase of evolution. It's a visible evolution.
Yes.
But there are also invisible evolution. What about evolution of the capacity to love, capacity to live in groups, evolution of health?
Yes.
We have dramatically modified the phase of life,
Yes.
of human life, where our basic adaptive systems are developing. No, we don't know what we're doing.
No.
You know, all babies now are exposed to ultrasound.
Yes.
If it's alive,
Yeah.
but nobody is wondering, but what are the possible long-term effects, non-specific effects on health? We don't know.
No.
We cannot know. We cannot do so-called randomized studies, you know, not be ethical. The period of birth is completely modified, dramatically modified, no hormone of birth, no hormone of love, no familiar microbe. And after the birth, we are still interfering.
Yes.
Some babies receive 11 vaccinations. We don't know. The point is that we don't know. So what I want to say in this book
This is it.
is that we're at the time when to phrase appropriate questions.
Yes.
The meaning of, I never give opinions. I never suggest theories. I say constantly, this is an unprecedented situation.
Yeah.
What to do in an unprecedented situation to phrase appropriate questions. So that's the meaning of this book. Question mark. So
Yeah. So that is to make people then think about these
but
things
you have
and
to think-
hopefully then
No,
look at.
yes. I say, what if futurologists, people interested in the future, can share evolutionary thinking?
Yes.
Instead of having futurologists who think of human activities and evolutionists who think of the past.
Yeah. And we're overlooking, like you're saying.
We need to develop interdisciplinary perspective, mixing what we can learn from different perspectives.
Yeah.
Is the opposite of pluridisciplinary perspective. Pluridisciplinary, everybody is providing data,
Yes.
but
Indeed.
for specialized people, interdisciplinary, you forget the frontier, the borders, the limit between. So that,
Yeah, I think absolutely. We need to make more connections between all the different things that are going on.
how to start?
Yes.
How to start? Perhaps I anticipate on your question, but it doesn't matter. What can we do?
Yes.
Because you want to talk mostly about childbirth.
Yeah.
I think what we can do at the present time is to realize how we have reached a lack of understanding of birth physiology.
Yes.
I told you I don't talk about physiology of birth
No.
because we would have to go back to the time when birth was not socialized,
Yes.
women going to the bush to give birth.
Yeah.
That's probably physiological birth, but we cannot imitate them right away.
No.
But we can study birth physiology.
Yeah.
And we might observe when you think like physiologists today, we have to think like physiologists.
Yes.
To forget what is cultural, to forget our way of thinking, to forget. At the present time, we have explained why there is such a lack of understanding of birth physiology. One reason is that birth, as we said, has been socialized for 10,000 years. It's one reason, interference. But there is another reason that people who studied medicine or midwifery, who have studied textbook, can realize, have to realize. And it's a way, once more, to go back to the question mark.
Yeah, it's a question.
One reason why we don't understand birth physiology is that we don't start from the right question.
Okay.
Today, look at textbooks. What is the point of departure as a question? They say how to explain the difficulties of human birth. Why human births are difficult? They start from that question.
Yes.
They start from the question and immediately they say it's for mechanical, morphological reasons. So they show pictures of fruit and others, in old textbooks and so on. The shape and the size of the maternal skeleton, the pelvis, the shape and the size of the baby's head, and therefore mechanical reasons, human births are difficult, full stop. That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a wrong question. We should start from another one.
Okay.
And some people can understand the reason for this question. Why occasionally, even during the 20th century, it happens that some women who, morphological speaking, are not special, some women give birth easily, quickly, by themselves, straightforward birth, by themselves. That should be the first question. Why human birth can be easy and straightforward?
Right, yeah.
Even if, morphologically speaking, there is nothing special. We should start from this question.
Yeah.
And if we start from this question, we realize that we are constantly misled by our cultural conditioning. Since the beginning of the domination of nature, we think as if a woman cannot give birth without some cultural interferences.
Yeah.
And we cannot give details, but just look at the vocabulary, the words. The word translates and transmits our cultural conditioning. The key words about childbirth are often helping, guiding, controlling. It depends which group you belong to. In natural childbirth groups, often it has been coaching. What does it mean? You need an expert to guide you. In medical circles, it's labor management.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Groups promoting natural childbirth, most of them, I must say that, we must accept that. Group promoting natural childbirth, medical circles, is the same way of thinking. If there is a cultural lack of understanding of birth physiology for two reasons, historical, and because today we start from the wrong question. So if we start from the right question, in the framework of modern neurophysiology, suddenly we can offer a new understanding of human birth and a new understanding of the basic need of a laboring woman. Today, suddenly, we are in a position to understand the importance of a new concept. Important as a concept which is the key to understanding human nature in general and some physiological processes in particular, is the concept of neocortical inhibition. I have to explain what it means. Easy to explain. Everybody knows why human beings are special. We have developed a part of the brain, at extreme degree, the new brain. Technically, we call it the neocortex, thanks to which we can use sophisticated way to communicate, what we are doing now, do mathematics, and so on, so on, so on. So until recently, this new brain, this neocortex, so developed at such a degree among humans only, was considered, presented as a tool at the service of vital physiological functions, providing information about space, time, facilitating communication. It was a tool. But suddenly, in a new scientific concept, there are new concepts. In the age when we talk about inhibitory neuromediators and so on, I don't want to give details, but suddenly we are in a position to understand that the neocortex, the new brain, among humans, does not always play the role of facilitator. It happens, on the contrary, that the neocortical activity, the activity of the new brain, can inhibit some physiological functions. This is the concept of neocortical inhibition, which is becoming a key to understand human nature in general and some physiological processes in particular. I don't want to jump on childbirth to explain what it means. I'll give an example with another physiological function,
Okay.
the sense of smelling, olfaction. It has been demonstrated in a simple way. Let's forget the details, it's simple. Let's summarize. If you drink a glass of wine, after that, your sense of smell is more powerful. What happens when you drink a glass of wine, alcohol? You reduce the neocortical.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Your sense of
Okay.
smell is more powerful.
Yes.
So
Right.
it's a way to explain the concept of neocortical inhibition. So when this is understood, we are on the way to reconsider how the birth process is understood after thousands of years of socialization of childbirth. Suddenly we understand that the birth process is a good example of a physical function that can be inhibited by neocortical activity. We are in a position to understand the solution that nature found to make human birth possible and even potentially easy among humans. A very simple solution. The neocortex must stop working.
Yeah.
Giving birth is not the business of the thinking brain.
No.
Giving birth is the business of primitive structure. So nature found a solution. A solution that some people, even during the 21st century, even after thousands of years, socialization of childbirth, a solution that some people can still understand. Some people can still understand that when a woman can give birth easily, when it's straightforward, she does not need a pharmacologist and so on.
Yeah.
No.
There is a time when she's as if cutting herself off from her world. No interest for what's happening around, forgetting what she read in books, forgetting her plans. She can behave in a strange way, screaming, shouting, swearing.
Yeah.
Some signs people that have been often noticed because people who are not ready for that, but like also incredibly important. After what we said about the sense of smell, some women in hard labor can perceive odors that the people around cannot perceive. That's a very good sign of reduced neocortical activity in the control. And when a woman is like that on the planet, forgetting the rest of the world, she can easily find by herself bizarre postures, primitive, mammalian, quadrupedal postures, which complete on the planet.
Yeah.
That's the solution nature found to make human birth possible among humans. This is what we understand today.
Yeah.
Not easy. You have to reconsider completely our way of thinking. That's what was. And if this is understood, after that, everything is simple. It will come easily.
Yes.
What are the basic needs of a laboring woman? To be protected.
Yeah.
The key word now is protection.
Yeah.
It's not helping, guiding, controlling, supporting, and so on. Protecting the laboring woman against all inhibitory factors. And among the inhibitory factors, there are in particular all stimulants of the neocortex.
Yeah.
So it's quite simple. If you understand that, you understand women must be protected against language, that's enemy, against light.
Yeah.
She must be, we must avoid situations that might stimulate our attention.
Yeah.
We have to avoid attention because it's stimulated. For example, you feel observed. When you feel observed, you pay attention to yourself.
Yeah.
So is this where you see the role of
And
the doula?
also among situation that stimulate the neocortex is perception of a possible danger.
Okay.
So that is it to summarize. I want to use it to summarize. When you have understood the concept of neocortical inhibition, immediately you understand language is the enemy.
Yeah.
Bright light is another obstacle. Situations like feeling observed, perceiving that's all. It's incredibly. It's another way of thinking.
Yeah.
So what we need today, in general, when we are at the limits of the domination of nature, you know, we're at the edge of the precipice.
Yes.
Yeah.
What can we do to take another direction? To take another direction is to change our way of thinking. It's not easy. It's what you call people talk entering a new paradigm, a new way of thinking, with a new vocabulary and so on.
Yeah.
You wanted to...
Yeah, I said, doulas. We're working as doulas, and I know you do workshops for doulas. Would you see doulas as the people to help protect the space for the birthing woman?
But, doulas, at the present time, they share the dominant cultural conditioning.
Okay.
So there are several kinds of doulas.
Yeah, tell us
In the same way, there are several kinds of midwives.
Yeah.
7 kinds of doctors and so on and so on. So it's not special to doulas. But I know doulas who are ready to enter a new paradigm. I can give an example of how a doula I know quite well.
Okay.
Her name is Liliana.
Yes.
When she's asked, but what can I expect from you? She just said, I'm your bodyguard.
Okay.
That's all. I'm your bodyguard. What can you do to protect you? It's a way of thinking.
Okay.
Instead of talking about what she can do, what she can do, protection.
Okay.
Today, when you think like physiologists about involuntary processes, and you think of that from a practical perspective, you understand that the key word is protection.
Yeah.
It's a new way of thinking. You cannot help, you cannot guide, you cannot control, you cannot support an involuntary process. You can protect it against inhibitory factor. It's a new way of thinking. So today, we are at a time, whatever the topic, when we are at the edge of the precipice, whatever the topic, the limits of the mission of nature, we have to change our way of thinking. And that is not impossible in a new scientific context. Because today, the evolution of obstetrics is mostly influenced by scientific advances. During the second half of the 20th century, it has been mostly influenced by technical and technological advances. I can say that because I can remember that time. There have been the plastic revolution.
Yes.
There have been the development of electronic monitoring, new techniques of cesarean section, and new techniques of anesthesiology. So we had to adapt to technical and technological advances. We were just to absorb them.
Yes.
But today it's another matter. Today, history of childbirth is becoming mostly influenced by scientific advances. And the effect of scientific advances, they push us to change our way of thinking. Now it's much more difficult to adapt. We have to change our way of thinking. For example, the point is to help a woman to give birth, to protect her. It's inhibitory factor. For example, microbes until recently were enemies.
Yeah. Keep it sterile.
Now the question is how to compensate microbial deprivation.
Yes. Yeah.
New way of thinking. Constantly, in physiology and so on. So this is the phase of the history in which we are. We have to accept, that we are, it's a kind of survival of the species. That's why the only thing we can do today is to phrase appropriate questions.
Yeah.
That's an important point. I say phrase, not to raise questions, to phrase. How we formulate the question.
So language.
Yes, to phrase the question, appropriate question. When you are in an unprecedented situation, first thing to do is to phrase appropriate question. And that's all. After, it's too early often to provide answers or theories. Don't rush for theories for answering. Let's first phrase appropriate questions. So today, what childbirth is concerned is how to adapt to what we are learning from modern physiology. how to integrate, to absorb concepts like neocortical inhibition. That's where we are. It's a reason for optimism.
Yes.
Today, there are reasons for pessimism. It's obvious.
Yeah.
There are reasons for optimism. The real question, in fact, is are we sure that what we are learning from emerging and fast developing scientific discipline will induce on time not to have a new awareness. What we need now is a new awareness, new way of thinking.
Let's hope so.
Is it possible? Is it in the powers that at the present time this is really the dominant question? It's a question people seem ready now to accept as a question. It's starting. It's going fast, because of scientific evolution. For me, it's not the first time that I raise this question.
No.
But I understand that suddenly I can introduce this question.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. Exactly 40 years ago, 1979, I published a book in French called Genèse de l'homme écologique. Genesis of an ecological man.
Okay.
40 years ago. People were talking about ecological awareness, ecological sciences, ecological politics, and all of that. I said, but what we need is an ecological human beings. The question is how to develop the respect for Mother Earth. Let's start from that. When I published this book with the title Genèse de l'homme écologique, publisher didn't want this book. They didn't want the title.
No.
The French publisher, until the last day, tried to convince me that I had to introduce the word birth in the title. Birth was commercial. But ecological man, nobody understands what it's about. Nobody can understand. In fact, it's what I've repeated many times since that time. It's also about the evolution of human beings. Can we imagine, I've said that also a different way, time when human beings will become able to phrase vital questions before it's too late.
Yes.
So that was 40 years ago. The book had been published in spite of the publishers. Of course, in language where I could not control the title, they introduced the word birth in the title.
Okay.
Like in German.
Yeah.
Geburt des Menschen, it was like that. But the interesting point, this year, 2019, a French publisher, a Paris publisher, took the initiative to republish the book which was difficult to understand 40 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I see, right.
Genèse de l'homme écologiste, how to develop the respect for Mother Earth. That was the title.
Right.
Raising the question.
Yeah.
I was raising a
Yes,
question.
40 years ago.
Now, from what you understand, I was saying, but the question is how to develop the respect for Mother Earth? Question mark.
Yes.
So it's not my initiative, but this book is republished this year by a Paris publisher.
Amazing.
I don't change anything to the
No.
original text, just an introduction to say that we are in another concept. So it's just to explain that. I think important to emphasize this point, that the conversation we have today, about history of childbirth,
Yes.
the turning point in the history of childbirth, this should not be a topic only for pregnant women,
No.
midwives, doulas, obstetricians.
No.
It should be a topic for all those interested in the future of our species, of even the planet Earth, of our species, and so on.
You're right.
It's for everybody. That's my main preoccupation today.
Okay.
When I'm constantly able to speak to people interested in childbirth.
Yes, but
Constantly.
you want to do something else.
I'm sure that people will listen to us now.
Yeah.
because
They want to hear childbirth.
Yes, but
Yes.
my objective today is to reach the others.
Of
Yes.
course.
To reach the others. That's a priority.
Yes.
But it's becoming suddenly possible.
Yeah.
A reason for optimism.
You mentioned about childbirth. We talked about how it's become socialized. It's become quite masculine as well.
When
isn't it?
it becomes, the
introduction of
point
it.
is that it became socialized.
Yes,
That's the point, the turning point
yes.
in the history.
So, what do you think? This is just another question. This leads on to another question. What do you believe needs to happen in maternity care for it to become truly woman-centered?
Perhaps we can first look at the vocabulary and eliminate the word care,
Yeah.
Okay.
which is active.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
That's the first step, to look at the vocabulary,
So we need to change the question.
to change the way of thinking.
Yeah.
You know, with the
Yes.
vocabulary, we translate, and we transmit our way
You're
of
right.
thinking.
Yes.
Language is so important.
The dominant paradigm, the cultural conditioning. So, in fact, it's a way to go back to your question. You know, I jump on the word you use.
Yes.
At the present time, how to start? Even if we can reach a new awareness is unpredictable. It's mysterious. You know, suddenly, you never know. It depends on the media. But one possible way to be effective is to consider seriously the vocabulary we use.
Yes.
It's not easy. You know, when I'm in America and I discuss the concept of support, because in America they use a lot the word support, more than in England. In English, support. What does it mean, support? You need energy brought by someone else.
Yeah.
You know, in America, home birth midwife, doulas, all these people involved in what they call natural childbirth, are not ready to abandon the word support.
No.
So it's not new. No, in the 1990s, I already published in an American magazine that was called at that time Mothering, an article called "Why Laboring Women Don't Need Support."
Okay.
In 1990s, 25 years ago,
Yes.
why laboring women, people could not understand.
No.
Yes.
They were not ready for that, in America particularly. So, to go back to your question, you know, how to start, I think vocabulary, but also one way. In fact, your question is how to participate in initiation of a necessary new awareness. If you are here, if we talk together, it means that you are special. You have already reached a certain degree of awareness that you cannot share easily with everybody. And you are wondering, what can I do to participate in this new awareness? The word we use, vocabulary, but also, as to summarize, you can try to do is to train yourself to be bilingual. What does it mean? What does it to be bilingual? It's not just speaking Swedish and English. It means the capacity to associate, to combine two languages if you want to be effective. If you just try to transmit your intuitive knowledge, if you just try to speak the language of the heart, at the present time, will be useless. Nobody will listen to you. If you just say that love is important, people have said that for thousands of years, that love is important. You can say that, but it's not enough.
Okay.
Transmitting your intuitive knowledge, transmitting the language of the heart is not enough. You must combine that today with scientific knowledge. It's obligatory. You don't need to be expert in many scientific disciplines. You need to know what is essential. And suddenly you can become effective to combine both. For example, I'll give an example of being bilingual. When we're talking about basic need of laboring women, I mentioned, by the way, that light inhibitory factor. If you had said that 40 years ago, it was nice to say that, but nobody will listen to you.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
empiric. Today, instead of saying light can inhibit the birth process, you introduce the issue of the role of melatonin during labor. You, particularly if you speak with people with a scientific background, you explain that today, melatonin, a well-known hormone, released by the pineal gland and so on, is considered as the darkness hormone. We release this hormone in particular when we are not exposed to bright light, the darkness hormone. And today, it appears that melatonin is a key hormone in childbirth. It's working with oxytocin
Okay.
at several levels in the neocortex, working with other inhibitory neuromediators, working with oxytocin, even at the level of the uterus. In the uterus, there are receptors to melatonin, darkness hormone, that work together with receptors to oxytocin.
Right.
So, what I explained now, it took 3 minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
But just to say that suddenly, and that's a reason for optimism,
Yeah.
if you make the effort of becoming bilingual, associating two languages, it seems possible, more easier, to participate in the initiation of a necessary new awareness.
Yeah.
Here we are at the present time. I must say that this is my main preoccupation today when I write a book. I provide scientific information, references. Of course, it's difficult sometimes because you don't say the same to different kind of publics, you know.
No.
If you are poor scientist, you don't speak the same language as if you are with a nice doula who had several babies who have never had opportunity to study scientific matters, you know. But it does not matter. I think that everybody today must realize that you need some basic scientific knowledge. Simple.
Yeah.
What we are learning from this new discipline called epigenetics, to say how some of our genes are educated not to express themselves. They are allocated a marker, a label saying be silent, and it seems that period of birth is critical. It's critical for in terms of epigenetic activity. You can explain that, in 10 minutes. Explaining that today the immune system of newborn babies is not educated by a great diversity of familiar microbes. So, if we explain that, people say, but is there not a risk of increasing prevalence of dysregulation of the immune system? Allergic diseases. There are already more allergic diseases. Autoimmune diseases like diabetes, type 2, and so on, and so on. So now the ball in the court of epidemiologists.
Yes.
We know today epidemiologists to evaluate to which extent some dysregulation of the immune system, which are more common, and are related to the way we have modified the birth process. We need that. Until now, we must say that we don't have at our disposal such studies. There are already epidemiological studies that try to evaluate the prevalence of the dysregulation of the immune system in relation to how we were born, but they were contrasting hospital birth with hospital birth.
Okay.
Yes.
So we don't get.
And when we talk about microbial environment is important,
Yes.
what you have to contrast? Home birth
Yes, of
and
course.
birth elsewhere.
Of course.
Suddenly, but perhaps in a new scientific perspective, we have to perhaps to reconsider the issue of home birth versus hospital birth. From a bacteriological perspective, immunological perspective, it will be an obligatory topic.
Yes.
So I think it's good to finish on this by emerging and fast developing scientific discipline.
Yeah.
They are pushing us to think, to enter a new paradigm. It means we have to change our way of thinking.
Yeah.
It's not adapted to technique, so it's changing our way of thinking. It's an interesting phase of the history of mankind.
It is exciting. Well, I mean, this has been absolutely fascinating,
very
Michelle.
much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And just to say as well that your book...
Yes, the book is out on the 11th of August.
No, October.
October.
So October the 18th.
I think it's around 15th of October.
Okay, so in October, Michel Dan's latest book, and there's a book
There will be a launching of the book in
in
London.
Efra Space,
Yes,
which is Pinter
with the
Martin's
launching of the book,
headquarters. So watch out for that
in October.
in October.
October the 18th.
Yeah. And so thank you so much for all of you that tuned in, and we'll be back on the 14th of July with Hilary Lewin for another live. So thank you very much, and thank you so much,
you,
Michelle.
Michelle.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. What an incredible conversation to look back on. It feels so special to be able to share Michel's wisdom and his gentle humour with you all, and to remember the huge impact he had on the world of birth. I hope this episode has given you as much inspiration as it gave us when we first recorded it back in 2019. Our thoughts continue to be with Michel's family and loved ones. His legacy lives on through all the work we do to support women, babies and families. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to having Siobhan back with me next month, where we're going to do a business special episode, and I'm telling you, you don't want to miss that one. So until then, take care and see you next month.
Listeners should always do their own due diligence on any information received from these discussions to form their own opinions and best judgments. In preparing this podcast, we have endeavoured to offer current, correct and clearly expressed information aimed at our audience. However, we make no claims that the information will be accurate, complete or current at all times, and we accept no liability for any reliance placed by any person on this information. We make no representations or warranties of any kind about the suitability, reliability, timeliness and accuracy of the information contained herein.